Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Gee whiz. Plenty happening this morning. I don't know any of it because I've been distracted by another sideshow. The old sideshow, the old gun sideshow, as a matter of fact. But I can tell you what else is going on just by reading you Bill's morning tweet so I get some idea of, what else does the audience want to hear today? That's the main value of a tweet like this. The Kagro in the Morning is live now. We know this is the case. It's just Kagro X. That's just me today. Yes, we're minus Joan today. She's busy with things, but let's read on. A microphone. It's just me, a microphone, a pair of headphones, scattered notes. Definitely have that. You want me to rustle the papers a little bit? You hear that? Sound effects. Cool, huh? Scattered notes and a three-toed sloth. What kind of noise does this three-toed sloth make? I don't know. Leave me alone, probably. With post-nasal drip. Singing Puccini. Well, this is all the talent is in that third toe, by the way, and he's got more of it in his tiny, slow-moving body than... All right, anyway, nobody is really sure what the last item is for, but I say let's roll with it. We'll find out, and we'll see if we can't get the sloth to give us a little performance this morning. As I said, much going on. My morning distraction is, a routine thing, essentially. Here in America, but it just one of those things that strikes you like a stray bullet every once in a while, about just how weird it is here in America that we no longer notice this sort of thing, and it's just background noise for all of us. But, yes, it's the case, and I guess foreign listeners, I guess probably not surprised because they hear me talk about guns enough as it is, and, it's not even a main topic of the show anymore. But you probably have the impression, I'm sure, just from, viewing the news every once in a while, if you see it from wherever you are, or if you look something up, or you see one of the stories that I retweet with the gun fail hashtag on it. This is a rather remarkable story, circumstances and the timing, of course. But, why don't we get to the story, and then we can share what I learned about the story while I was reading it, or after I was reading it. Our good friend SFDB, who keeps an eye on the gun fail beat for us, and is the primary source of the gun fail stories that I retweet these days, because I just can't find the time to watch them all the same way I used to. But SFDB digging up this one under the heading usually used here, Our NRA World, and just sort of reminding everybody of how often guns are fired in this country. The headline, the whole story is summed up thus by the SFDB tweet, usually giving a wry twist to everything. North Carolina gunslinger and well-regulated militia person, I'm sure, tries to shoot his pit bull that is attacking him, which is problematic enough, really, here in America. You might wonder why that happened. But at any rate, it happened this Sunday, which, as you may know, was Mother's Day. And at any rate, he shoots his pit bull tries to shoot his pit bull who's attacking him on Mother's Day for some reason. But instead, he misses. And who does he hit? And who does he kill on Mother's Day? Not the pit bull's mother, his own. So happy Mother's Day, Mom, 72 years young. We'll be burying you this week, I guess, because you're dead, because your son, just screwed up, I guess, from top to bottom. Bought himself a pit bull and trained and cared for it so well that it was attacking him with enough deadly force that he felt it was necessary to reach for a gun, although who knows. So people do things like, I want to cut his collar off for some reason, and I will use a gun to, people do dumb things. I don't know what was going on. Here's this story, WRAL.com, one of the local TV stations. And what can I tell you? Rocky Mount, North Carolina is the setting for this. Rocky Mount, not not a classic gun fail capital in the same way back in the day that Rock Hill, South Carolina was. But Rocky Mount, North Carolina has more than its share. And we'll talk about just what that means in a few minutes. But, not a huge or important, it's not certainly not a big city with, rampant crime on the streets like New York City, where they actually don't have a tremendous amount of crime these days, but used to in decades past. But that's another story for another day. But it is right on Route 95. It's a frequent stop for travelers looking for an overnight hotel stay on a long trip up and down the East Coast on I-95. But okay, Rocky Mount police say a man accidentally shot and killed his mother during Mother's Day dog attack. And really, honestly, if you're going to schedule a dog attack, why not just let mom have that day be about her without murdering her? But even if you do, why not just schedule the dog attack for a different day? I'm just so saddened by this whole thing. Brian Mims, WRAL reporter, rocketing to fame on the back of this amazing, world-shattering news story. Except that it's not. No one noticed it. I mean, this would get no notice anywhere. Except, WRAL covered it, I guess. But generally speaking, this is a local interest story, if that. No charges are expected, by the way, for a man who Rocky Mount police say accidentally shot and killed his mother on Mother's Day while his dog attacked him. He was having a bad day, so why make it worse, I guess they say. The shooting happened around 2:30 p.m. Sunday at a house on Meadowbrook Road near Springfield Road, according to the Rocky Mount Police Department. They're very clear. The Rocky Mountain Police Department, effective in describing where the house was. It's on a street, and that street is near another street. But other than that, nobody's covered in glory in this story. The shooting happened around 2:30 p.m. A sign above the door at Christopher Edwards' house, they're going to tell everybody who shot his mom, Christopher Edwards, says, "Beware of the dog." But shouldn't it really say, "Beware of the owner and his gun"? Well, that might have been a good idea, but they've forgotten. They didn't get around to it. Edwards, 42, is the son of Sarah Hankerson. Hankerson, 72, or she was anyway, came by her son's home every day to help take care of his pit bull, neighbor Morris Wynn said. There are a lot of pit bull sympathizers out there, no doubt, who simply, whenever one of these things comes up, usually when you're shooting dogs, to be honest, I mean, if you're not a cop, cops shoot any dogs they can find. And cops regard any dog as a pit bull. If they are raiding your house, even if they're raiding your house by accident because they read the warrant wrong, and you have, a little, teacup, I don't know how many dogs have teacup versions? Is there a teacup Shih Tzu? That sounds like the sort of a harmless dog, right? If you have a Chihuahua, if you have a Golden Retriever, and the dog picks its head up from the couch to say, "Who's bashing our door in and shooting my family?" They say, "Dog, vicious dog," and they shoot the dog. And it's a free target. There's no paperwork for shooting a dog. So I don't know, cops just love doing it. You've heard me say it before. Pit bulls get shot a lot because a lot of people apparently raise and abuse pit bulls very badly, and they do things like attack their owners. And dog lovers are constantly assuring me that a pit bull can be raised like any other dog, to be a fun and loving dog, and they are not by nature particularly aggressive. I don't know whether I believe it or not, but on the other hand, a lot of people raise them because they're pretty easy to turn into mean, nasty guard dogs. But I guess the side effect of that is the training that makes them mean and nasty makes them, they're not dumb. I think, this person is mean and nasty to me, I'm going to bite him. Well, anyway, even if this was not the case, and this was a teacup Shih Tzu, mom has to come by and take care of your dog every day at age 42. You should think about a goldfish. Anyway, Hankerson, 72, came by her son's home every day to help take care of this pit bull. And maybe that's why the pit bull was attacking Edward and not Mom. So, okay. Wynne had known Hankerson for about 10 years and spoke with her on Sunday, right before she got shot and killed by her son. I called her and I told her, Happy Mother's Day, Wynne said. Good thing you got that call in before 2:30 p.m. I mean, I know this is tragic and everything. The only way I can deal with the story like this, I guess, is through this dark humor, because otherwise it's just like, what are we doing? But really, what are we doing? That's the real story here. I don't know. So Wynne said Hankerson went to church on Sunday, and he waved to her again after she returned to her son's house. She was a giving person, and I will miss her because I get up and I see her about every morning when she'd come over and feed the dog, Wynne said through sobs. And again, peripheral, but he doesn't even feed the dogs in the morning. I don't know. Maybe he's a hardworking person. Maybe he's been delivering our Amazon packages to all of our privileged homes, and we're like, where the hell's my whatever I've ordered? And, we're angry because Edward is late, and if he stops and feeds his dog, we don't get our stuff on time. Who knows what the circumstances are? Everybody's got a story. But still. Well, then also don't get a pit bull. But again, I'm out delivering packages all day. I need somebody taking care of my house. But Mom's free. I don't know. Whatever. It's all crazy. Police said the dog attacked Edwards. Okay. Then he then grabbed his gun and fired a shot while struggling with the dog, police said. Which, a pit bull can mess you up pretty bad, and I don't know. But it also seems to me, I guess I have this feeling that he's had in his head all along a plan of, it is a little dangerous to do what I do with the dogs. And I'm assuming all of this. This could all be wrong. He could be an angel, this guy. And the dog, for that matter. I don't know. But I get the feeling sometimes people are like, well, sure, the dogs are a little dangerous. And mostly keep them in control. But if anything goes wrong, I got my gun. And they visualize, fighting with the dog a little bit like it's a wolf in the wild. And you grab the gun like in the movies and pow. And it's all so sad because I, quote unquote, love my dog. Won't feed him or train him not to attack me. But I do love him to some extent. And I'll be so sad the day I have to shoot my dog, but I'm already dreaming about it. I don't know. There's just a lot of pit bull shooting going on. Anyway, guess what? He missed, and a police spokesman said the medical examiner, and I love the bare bones nature of this story, too. I mean, how long are you going to spend investigating it, right? Your WRAL, which I think is from Raleigh, Durham. And I don't know how far exactly it is. It's not too far, but it's a long broadcasting range. How long are you going to spend on a guy who tried to shoot his pit bull? But it is an extraordinary story. He kills his mom on Mother's Day. But it's TV news. They're not going to spend that much time on it. But even so, just the stark nature of the bare bones reporting somehow makes this thing worse. I mean, this could be an in-depth investigative report and just a full sketch of the real lives of the people who did it, not the caricature, as Greg often says. The way I'm handling this, I'm doing a very poor job. But I'm doing this because there's a huge hole in the reporting here, but there always will be. That's the second part of today's coverage of this story. Just the way we just routine, blow it off story. I mean, this is nothing. This is nothing. No national news organization is going to pick this up. In this country, it's nothing. Police said the dog attacked Edwards. He grabbed his gun, fired a shot while struggling with the dog, police said. Also great writing. A police spokesman said the medical examiner found that a bullet struck his mother, who died on the scene. Wow. Okay, it's a sad story. But again, of course, that's the basic facts of it. But it's only the basic facts. It's kind of like, wow, what a great medical examiner. How did this woman die? Well, I puzzled it out, but it was the bullet that struck her. Edwards went to the hospital and is now wearing a cast on his forearm. I guess that's where the dog bit him. He declined to speak on camera, but he told WRAL News, I lost my mom. That's why we're here doing the story, of course. But what else is he going to say? And just brief aside, I lost my mom. No, you didn't. She's right here. She's dead. You killed her. It was an accident. but you didn't lose your mom. You shot her. And you were trying to kill your dog. Trying to kill your own dog. Because it was attacking you and you supposedly thought it was going to kill you. And in the desperate life or death struggle between you and your own dog, nothing got lost. No body got lost. I know it's a euphemism. I know it's just a crutch of a phrase, and in the middle of actually having to, contemplate having killed your mom, what else are you going to say? But I'm just pointing that out. She was an amazing woman, he said. She was loving. We just ask for prayer from the community and privacy and respect. Well, that's out the window. I'm having a hard time with the respect part. And the privacy, what can I do? It's in the news. I got to read it. The police spokesman said that while the shooting is still under investigation, it appears to have been an accident. I love her and I miss her. Wynn said of Hankerson. That's the neighbor, who, by the way, can't be bothered to feed the dog, I guess. Wynn said Hankerson was a God-fearing woman who attended St. John's, this is interesting, St. John's Missionary Baptist Church, but it's not just that. They incorporate, I guess, chapter 3, verse 16 of the Gospel of John, the thing you would hold up at a football game with wearing a rainbow afro wig. And it's called St. John's 3:16 Missionary Baptist Church. They just worked that right in the name. I've never seen that. I'm praying to God this will strengthen the family, that the family will come together, and that something good may come out of this, Wynn said. I guess, right, let's pray for something good to come out of this. And it's difficult to see the silver lining of this one. I'm not sure. Savings on dog food? No, the dog is still alive. That's right. Well, temporary savings on dog food because a police spokesman said the dog is now in quarantine at the police department's animal services unit. I don't know what they have to do, but, they got rules. The dog bites somebody, even the idiot who raised the dog wrong, apparently. Maybe they did a great job. I don't know. The investigation, I'm sure, into that will be more thorough. What can I tell you? That's crazy. That's the end of the story as it's printed. I hope something good can come out of it, but I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe I don't know. Nothing I can think of. Anyway, so, you scroll down to the bottom, and granted that the algorithm that controls the stories that it will show you next, more stories like this, that's what they're displaying. So obviously, they're not going to be great stories, and they're going to be related to some of the key words here. So, it's no accident. It's not that every piece of news coming out of Rocky Mount, North Carolina is about a shooting, but, there's plenty to choose from. So more stories like this. The headlines, by the way. So again, I'm just imagining your basic foreign reader who somehow lands on WRAL to read about a shooting in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Who's going to do that, right? But if it happens, let's say people are now resting on their laurels after a successful election in Schleswig-Holstein near Denmark, as I learned yesterday. I didn't look up whether or not they're responsible for the black and white spotted Holstein dairy cows, but I guess so. Those Germans, especially the ones near the Danish border, are always innovating in the area of dairy. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. They don't have, I don't know whether they have pit bulls there frequently or not, but they're probably keeping them under control. You hardly ever hear about people in Schleswig-Holstein having to shoot their pit bulls on Mother's Day or any other day. Maybe because they're so close to Denmark, they all have Great Danes. And this doesn't happen because all of those Danes are so great that they don't do this to you. I don't know. Anyway, so here you are, and you're just like, it's the day after a successful election in Schleswig-Holstein. Let me catch up on the news in various parts of the world. Oh my God, look what's going on in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. A man was trying to shoot his own dog, and he missed, and he killed his mother on Mother's Day. By the way, 100 other people try to kill their dogs on other days and kill their moms by accident. But this story is in the news and gets my attention because it happened on Mother's Day. That's crazy. That's just outrageous, unbelievable. And what are the odds? And of course, that's the story. the odds are fantastic because people are shooting at their dogs all the time and missing and killing their parents instead. One of them is bound to happen on Mother's Day. Granted, he could have shot his dad on Mother's Day and it wouldn't have been a story. But if he had shot his dad on Father's Day, now you're talking, right? And by the way, if he had been raised by two moms, as often happens in these changing times, the chances that this would have happened are doubled. Gosh, he had two moms to accidentally kill in a situation like this. This country, unbelievable. The big problem that we have, by the way, not the two moms. That seems to be going on. Not a lot of, can I go out on a limb? I don't think I've read a lot of stories about people raising pit bulls that attack them if they've been raised by two moms. So, little plug for having two moms on that. I'm sure it has to have happened somewhere. And I don't know what the odds are. Two dads, like whether that raises the odds or not. But I don't know. I don't see that story a lot. One day I'll be proven wrong by all this. And somebody's going to shoot them both accidentally on that day. Two of my pit bulls were attacking me. What are the odds of that? Not only that, but all right. Well, you get the point. Anyway, more stories like this. Well, okay, like I said, we're self-selecting for bad stories. But if you're just scrolling through, as I was, and I'm not even from Schleswig-Holstein. Are we pronouncing that right? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not from, I don't know. What are the other dumb names that they have out there? Where was Prince Albert from? He was, I can't forget. I don't know. He had a hyphenated place too. And then it was the family's royal family of England's name for a while until they changed it during World War I to Windsor, right? It's on the tip of my tongue, but my tongue is accidentally attacking me, and I shot the tip of my tongue off. More stories like this at the end of this fantastic story. 9-year-old injured when shots fired into Rocky Mount home. 72-year-old killed, this is another one, in unintentional shooting in Rocky Mount. Oh, wait a minute. I wonder if that's this one, because Mom was 72. I'm just curious, is this an earlier version of the same story? Curious. Yeah, I think so. So that's cheap. That's not fair. It is. So this is an earlier version of that one. But still, I don't know. There's still a problem going on here because, of course, there's more bad stories. Oh, why is this? Did this just take me back to? Well, why can't I go backwards again? This is so stupid. All right, I'll open it up again. Anyway, those were the headlines. There's two more, of course. I got to scroll back down to the end of this. So after reading our story, Rocky Mount police say a man accidentally shot and killed his mother during Mother's Day dog attack. More stories like this. There was the 9-year-old injured when shots fired into Rocky Mount home. Man charged, all right, this switched it up. Man charged with attempted murder in Rocky Mount shooting. Woman dies after shots fired inside Rocky Mount home. And 2 shootings create chaos in Rocky Mount. And that wasn't even in the list that I tweeted around. It rotated the list for me. So I went and I said, well, but maybe some of these stories are from like last year or something. And so I opened them all up, and they weren't. They were all from May, except one, and one was from March. And now that's not April. It's 2 months ago. But it's not a lot of time. They're certainly all from 2022. And you could be forgiven in Schleswig-Holstein or wherever you're reading if you got the impression that in America there are bullets flying everywhere all the time, and you should be crawling to the grocery store and back for fear of getting shot by stray bullets in America. And that's an exaggeration, but only slightly. Remember, all these shootings are in Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount, as I mentioned, not a big town. It's about 55,000 or less in population in Rocky Mount. That's not a big place, and although it's on a big highway, the locals are the ones doing all of this. And so they're all from May. And I might remind you, today is May 10th. This shooting did not happen today. It means that it happened on Mother's Day, May 8th. And all of these other shootings are from May 9th or earlier. There's only been 9 complete days in May. And they're able to fill the entire more stories like this section, which granted is only 4 stories, with 9-year-old injured when shots fired into Rocky Mount home. Man charged with attempted murder in Rocky Mount shooting. Woman dies after shots fired inside Rocky Mount home. 2 shootings create chaos in Rocky Mount. All in the last 10 days. Less than that, 9 days. Just, there they are. That's what's happening in America. And we're like, we should report on Ukraine. There's bullets flying all over the place. Very dangerous place to go. And it is. But on the other hand, it's no great shakes here in America either. So that's the news. That's the long. I did the whole segment on the chaos that is America these days. I don't know what to tell you. Darwin has something to say on this too. It's the defense of pit bulls, which is deserved because, again, I do see people all the time saying, I have, I'm one of those people you would think has one of these crazy dogs. I got 19 pit bulls, and they're all gentle giants. And it happens. It's true. There's nothing wrong with the dogs. Anyway, hold on now, he says. Let's slow down on the bad dog propaganda. Analysis of the survey results for purebred dogs suggested about 9% of behavioral variation was explained by breed. Yeah, it's true. The dogs are nice. There's nothing wrong with them. Well, I'll tell you what's wrong is we're so late on the music because I'm so astonished by the dog behavior or the dog defense. Yes, it's true though that you have to do something wrong, I think, to make your dog any breed do this. It's not the dogs, it's us. I mean, I thought it was obvious. The story was we're terrible. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. We're a little bit late coming back, too, because the music fools us, thinking we have longer time. Well, anyway, you get what's going on here. I'm so astonished by all the bad pit bull news out here, and others sharing some other random shootings. And Athena 5000 chiming in, just letting us know that somebody got shot in Newport News, Virginia, the other day or this morning, right? Just, I guess, what was the point of this? Just to show that on any random day, any day I wake up, like this day, now that you're all awake, check the news for wherever you are. Are you in Newport News, Athena? Maybe yes, maybe no. But basically, if you're in America, it doesn't matter whether you're in a big town, small town, rural America where this sort of thing doesn't happen. Chances are that in the last 10 days, somebody got shot where you are too, or a gun went off, or something went wrong with a gun. That's just, we have that many floating around. And, I mean, when I started with the gun fail stuff, there were like 40 people a day getting shot by accident in America. Had only about 10 of them making the news each day, and they don't all die, and sometimes it's just a story of the gun going off by accident in someone's purse, and nobody gets shot. But there really are bullets flying everywhere. It's just that this is a big country, and all the guns aren't going off all at once, so, there's no deafening, racket happening. We got a lot of space, And it takes a while for all these guns to eventually accidentally go off and shoot people or make a hole in your car or fire into the neighbor's house or whatever, which also happens about 100 times a year. So anyway, and I don't know, gun enthusiasts love to say, well, you see, 100, there's 330 million people in this country and 400 million guns somehow. And only 100 in a whole year, that's great. We're doing great. Except, it's not so great. Like I said, handheld instant death machines, if there are enough of them out there, 100 times a year, people are going to accidentally make a hole, the handheld instant death machine, or hole punch, however you want to put it. They'll punch a hole through any material, pretty much. Will go off and shoot somebody who had nothing to do with it. Just minding their own business in the next house, next apartment. And because you made the decision to get a handheld instant death machine and you couldn't contain it and you screwed up in your handling of it, somebody in the next house who may also have a gun, true. Funny if they bought a gun to protect themselves and their families and they just end up getting killed by accident by somebody else with their protective mechanism over in the next house. Not shooting at anybody, not intending to fire the gun at all, but just, whoopsie, did the thing. And then whoopsie, a person in the other house who bought a gun and made themselves safe with the gun got killed by the one that you bought in your next house over to make yourself safe. And you get where I'm going with all this. But all right, yeah, basically you can wake up any day of the week and check the news in your own town and you'll find out what the hell's going on in this country. Athena says this was last night, so that's news, and then across the street from the hospital, which is a terrific place if you're going to get shot, to be shot. Very quick response. I understand, although, bureaucratically speaking, it would not be at all unusual to find out that the guy was shot across the street from the hospital, but that the ambulance who picked him up came from the other hospital across town, and maybe even took him back to that hospital rather than taking him across the street. But I don't know if that's what actually happened. Sometimes if you're literally shot across the street from the hospital, you can crawl over there yourself and avoid the hassle. Think of the money he saved. That's the silver lining of this story. He didn't have to pay the hospital or pay the ambulance fee, which, by the way, if you get shot, it'll cost you $1,000 for a ride to the hospital. If you get shot in rural America, where this stuff never happens because nobody's got guns in rural America, or if you do, everybody knows how to use them, except for the ones who accidentally shoot themselves or their neighbors, or intentionally shoot themselves and their neighbors, you got to get a helicopter flight to save your life if you want to. If you want it saved. And that's like $15,000, $20,000 on top of everything else. But, you'll have to sell your Beanie Babies and see what you can do to make up the, no, I don't know. Anyway. Ricky, the Canuckistani. Now, this would be up at, do you all live on PEI? Someone, she says, shot the windshield out of her mom's car a few years ago. Is that also on Prince Edward Island? Because I would imagine there's far fewer guns and stray bullets flying in PEI, but I guess it could happen. Big town, Charlottetown. Gangs, right? The Royal Mounted MS-13, I think, is the ones terrorizing the island out there. So let's see. Here's a smooth transition for us from Darwin. Everyone's enjoying this segment. What's he sent me? Some dog artwork. They're playing poker? No. Dogs having a meeting. Is that what's happening? Meanwhile, at today's meeting on feline health care, it's a big table, and it's entirely populated by dogs. Very, wry commentary on, that's true, on the Roe v. Wade situation. I could probably exit the whole gun story at this point, but why? Honestly, when it's so interesting and entertaining. I can't believe how many terrible gun stories there are in this country. And, I really could go back to threatening to do entire shows on guns. Let me do another. I got to get out of the topic, although who knows what will drag me back in. And by the way, if you have a gun story that you want to share with us and you think it's outrageous enough for mention, don't be shy about it just because I'm leaving the topic. What do? I'm just a passenger on this crazy train. All aboard. Let's do a copyright violation and have Ozzy Osbourne sue us. Coronavirus, that other thing that sucks and we can't control it? Oh, plus that bird that's outside. I think that sounds like a blue jay. Them I know. Anyway, never mind that bird. Pay no attention. Coronavirus, just by way of letting you know what's happening in America, by which I mean my neighborhood, which means everybody's just like me. Loudoun County, you remember we were saying the other day, up on the cusp of triple digits for, I guess that's the 7-day average. Well, we're well beyond that, and we are at 146 now. The average number of new cases in Loudoun County reached 146 yesterday, 14% increase from the day before, but this is the rolling 7-day average. But I guess probably, I don't know, maybe at the beginning of last week we were saying flirting with, we're at around 99, flirting with triple digits, and it's gone steadily up since then. So 100, breaks 100 into the 110s, 120, 130, 140. So, on our way back up, the local chart makes it look like, it's a slow climb. I'm not too worried about it at the moment. And, of course, everybody will point to, with hospitalizations, 4% 14-day average change in hospitalization, minus 38% in deaths. That's great news. But I guess the 14-day change is plus 81% here in little old Loudoun County, where we from time to time accidentally shoot one another, just like everybody else. Okay, anyway, so that's one other direction we could go. Not where I needed to go. Let's run over to Pocket. There's like a bunch of stories we ignored yesterday with another stream of consciousness show, but it's time to catch up. And, man, there's a lot. Let's see. Some news. I'm really just going to blow through Pocket, more or less reverse chronologically, where things got parked, skipping over stories that are either way too long or otherwise irrelevant. I will try and wave together a show for you out of this. From The Guardian yesterday, I picked up this news. Capitol Attack Panel, that's the January 6th committee in the House. They're not plotting an attack on this panel. They're investigating the last one. Capitol Attack Panel moves closer to issuing subpoenas to Republicans. Can you believe it? Subheader here says, refusal to assist the investigation has caused the sentiment to turn towards taking near unprecedented action, sources say. So obviously they're getting no satisfaction out of members that they're trying to get to testify voluntarily so they don't have to wade into the legal and constitutional minefield of subpoenaing current sitting members. But what this means is that they're not going to get their answers voluntarily, and they're also probably not going to get them under subpoena anytime soon or maybe ever. The hearings, which were supposed to start in March, April, May, June, still allegedly scheduled for June. But remember, this time's up on this Congress this year. And the elections are coming. The elections, of course, will be in November, but they basically traditionally call everything off for the summer. So by mid-July, they're like, that's it. We're not doing any more work. Now, this panel may continue to do some work. That's possibly true. But remember that the goal here for Republicans is stretch things out, sue over everything, so that they run out of time, and then eventually we'll campaign. And if the Republicans manage to take control of the House of Representatives, they just kill this panel. That's the end of the investigation. So I picked this story up because I think it was circulated the other day with a tweet that said that people are starting to think on this panel and on the staff serving the panel, I'm starting to think we might actually run into a time problem here and run out of time, which is the thing that everybody predicted from day one of this whole thing. But remember that this attack happened on January 6th, virtually it was with the third day of the session, the third day of this Congress. And they're literally worried about running out of time in this 2-year Congress to investigate the attack on the Capitol, the insurrection against the government of the United States. Well, we might not get to fully investigate it within the next 2 years. That's our system of government. It's no wonder people are taking the law into their own hands and shooting their dogs and mothers, I must say. Members of the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol attack on January 6th are moving closer to issuing subpoenas to Republican members of Congress to compel their cooperation in the inquiry, though it has started to dawn on them that they may be out of time. The dawning of this. I just realized that this was a possibility. The panel is expected to make a final decision on the subpoena question over the next couple of weeks, which sounds like they're worried about running out of time. A couple of weeks. According to sources directly familiar with the internal deliberations, with House investigators needing to start wrapping up their work before public hearings in June. While the members of the Select Committee remain undecided about whether to subpoena Republican members of Congress, their refusal to assist the investigation in any form has caused the sentiment to turn towards taking that near unprecedented action, the sources said. The shifting view has come as a result of the dismay among the members in January when House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and others turned down requests for voluntary cooperation, turning to anger after 3 more of Donald Trump's allies last week refused to cooperate, unless they were writing books. What has changed in recent weeks in the Select Committee's assessment is that they cannot ignore the deep involvement between some Republican members of Congress and the former president's unlawful schemes to overturn the results of the 2020 election, the sources said. The recent letters to House Republicans Mo Brooks, Andy Biggs, and Ronnie Jackson, that's my drinky noise, Trump's former White House doctor, drunk, anyway, provided just a snapshot of the entanglement, the sources said, with the Trump White House and possibly the militia groups that attacked the Capitol. House investigators are particularly interested in any connections between Republican members of Congress and the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys militia groups, the sources said, since those groups were actually involved in the riot element of January 6th. Select Committee wanted to interview Jackson, for instance, to establish how the Oath Keepers came to learn as they stormed the Capitol that he had, quote, critical data to protect and needed, quote, protection, according to text messages revealed in court filings. But the panel has been holding off compelling that information with subpoenas, anxious about the inevitable circus that would accompany such a move, and, as The Guardian reported in January, embolden Republicans to subpoena Democrats if they take the House in 2022. Now, by the way, can I just pause to tell you how absurd the story there is? Remember, what we're talking about here is, oh my God, we've got to subpoena these Republican members of the House. I know it's unprecedented, but I think we're intimately involved in this attack on the United States government and the United States, way of, method of governance, our chosen, form of government, democracy. Everything is on the table here. They were attacking the whole thing. We're just going to have to subpoena them. Now, we'll subpoena them and they will take us to court. No, we're suing. It's impossible. It's unconstitutional to subpoena me. You cannot do it. They're constitutionally invalid subpoenas. Now, it might turn out that that's not the case, but that's going to be the argument. They may or may not lose it in time to force any, it probably won't work for June, but they may or may not, be able to drag this thing out until the elections. And then if they win, remember the threat is, well, then if we do that, then they'll subpoena us. Now, I think you probably see where I'm going with this. So supposing they then, just the chronology. Democrats subpoena Republicans. No we here. Democrats will subpoena Republicans. Republicans say, no, unconstitutional, invalid. You can't subpoena a member of Congress. They fight the case. Maybe they win. Maybe they lose. Maybe it's all resolved. But maybe more likely than not, it's not resolved by the time, let's say, they win control of the House of Representatives. Aha! The shoe's on the other foot. We're going to subpoena you. At which point Democrats say, but I thought you said that these subpoenas were unconstitutional and they couldn't do. We never said that. Or if we did, we meant they're unconstitutional for us to be subpoenaed. But to subpoena you, that's super constitutional. I can't believe you're even asking that question. George Washington told me it was fine. That's what I found out. And also Jesus, who was a founding father. So, that's pretty bizarre and hypocritical, right? But remember, the playbook says it doesn't matter that it's hypocritical. Sure, they're going to accuse you of hypocrisy. So what? Go on. Keep doing what you're doing. When you win, no one will care anymore. Oh, that guy's a hypocrite, but he's a winner. He's so hypocritical, it just might work. So that's what we're on. That's the track we're on for them to fight tooth and nail that such subpoenas are unconstitutional. And even if they win that fight and they get some crazy ass Trump judge to say, yep, those subpoenas are unconstitutional, they will absolutely, they're right. The Democrats are not wrong about this. They absolutely will subpoena Democrats. And the Democrats will file suit and they'll be in front of the same Trump judge, and the same Trump judge will say, I never said they were unconstitutional. I said unconstitutional, and that's different. I don't know what this excuse. What does it matter? He's probably going to give no opinion and just issue a summary opinion from the bench, and then blah blah blah, shadow docket, and I don't know. It's probably not going to rise to that level. But would they just reverse themselves? Yes, or more. I mean, more likely, you would get a normal judge on the second time around. The Trump judge will dismiss the subpoenas and say they're unconstitutional. Then Republicans, if they win control of Congress, and they better not, the subpoena Democrats will sue, point to the premise or the precedent of the stupid Trump judge, who they undoubtedly said was stupid when it happened. But, okay, fine. You end up, you got to avail yourself of something stupid in this stupid scenario. And then a normal judge will say, I'm not a Trump idiot judge. That guy's ruling is stupid. No, and he'll end up being properly upholding the at least the notion that, yes, you can subpoena a member of Congress. Whether or not it's on valid grounds when Republicans do it is an open question. Anyway, back to the story. The Select Committee told itself, the sources said, that it might be able to avoid the difficulty altogether. That is the big worry about issuing subpoenas, because they're worried about being subpoenaed themselves. They could avoid the difficulty altogether if it could get the information it needed from other places, as it did with Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, when his aides provided testimony. But that has not happened, and especially not with respect to the issue of the possible connections between Republican members of Congress and the militia groups, whose members are now largely unable to talk to the panel, having been placed under criminal investigation by the DOJ. The trouble for the Select Committee is that they may have run out of time to go down the subpoena route. What do you know? How could anybody have predicted this, except that we've been watching the subpoena route run out of time since, 2008, 2006? When Democrats first regained control of the House of Representatives in the middle of the George W. Bush administration, and they said, we're going to have oversight. Give us back control of Congress. We'll have oversight over this out-of-control George W. Bush administration. So-called administration. Why, he's done a million things that he should be impeached for, as have, the various members of his administration. We will have oversight hearings, to which the answer was, you can have the hearings, but we're not coming. Yes, you are. We'll subpoena you. You can't. We'll sue you. We'll show you that those subpoenas are unconstitutional. No, you won't. That's actually settled law. We've been down this road before. Don't you remember the last Republican administration before this one, back in 2006, 2008, when you did this before, and we told you, no, this was an invalid exercise, and we went to court and yada, yada. You remember that whole thing? Or maybe even the administration before that, when this first started, when we were subpoenaing, random people like the EPA administrator, Ann Gorsuch, who I know you remember her from the last name, and yes, that's her son, if you're a new listener and you didn't hear us explain this before. Anyway, Republicans have been defying these subpoenas since forever, and we knew without a doubt that the people would defy the subpoenas in the George W. Bush administration, and they were going to run out the clock. And they did, indeed, run out the clock. But what can I tell you? The guy who experienced that was John Conyers, and he's gone, so nobody remembers anything. We never write anything down and learn from it in this country. It's a weird thing. Anyway, so guess what? It's happening again. Who could have predicted? Except for the fact that all the same people are still there, or certain same people are still watching anyway, and broadcasting the same damn podcast still, saying that's not going to work, but you got to try, I guess. Where were we? The trouble for the select committee is they've run out of time to go down the subpoena route, or at least they worry about that. Even if the panel were now to issue a bevy of subpoenas to House Republicans, if their colleagues decide to ignore the subpoenas, the only real option it has to enforce the orders would be to pursue action through the slow-grinding cogs of the judicial system. That enforcement mechanism would probably take months, according to former prosecutors or people who have read the news at any point in the last 2 decades. An exercise potentially of little use to a panel that is seeking to start wrapping up depositions before the public hearings in June and expects to publish a final report in September. But some members believe Republicans may just cooperate if they are subpoenaed. The sources said, since Republican subpoenas to Democrats in a future investigation would only have teeth if Republicans don't defang the very congressional subpoenas first by defying them. Ha 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 ha! Logic. That's so cute. That's so dumb. What's wrong with you? Who's writing it? I'm sure they're fine people. Hugo Lowell, no doubt, an excellent person and a genius in his own right. But, how else are you going to handle this? How else do you cover total legal nihilism in a story about legislative process? You just basically have to say nothing, LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. That's, yes, they'll totally cooperate. No, they won't cooperate for fear that we won't cooperate with them. They'll throw us in jail. And then you'll find out about what the other mechanisms are. The enforcement mechanism, what do they say? The only real option is to enforce the orders through the slow-grinding cogs in the judicial system. Except, of course, for inherent contempt, although it does raise some questions about inherent contempt about sitting members of Congress. But maybe it's even more valid there. Right? There's no inter-branch problems like using inherent contempt to force executive branch officials to comply with subpoenas. You're not even crossing branch lines. And surely the Constitution definitely gives the legislature the opportunity, the prerogative to handle recalcitrant and otherwise uncontrollable members of their own house. You can certainly expel them. It doesn't say anything in the Constitution about putting them in jail, but inherent contempt, we've been down that road. It's inherent, for God's sake. Why not do it to members of Congress? Because they'll do it to us later on. Yeah, they might. They might. Go ahead and see whether anybody thinks it's valid or not. And besides which, I'm not a member of Congress. What do I care? You're in jail. Fine. I don't know. It's a real concern. They'll abuse it, no doubt. But I don't know. How many times do you want to let them just try and overthrow the government of the United States? I don't know. As long as you're guessing about whether or not, maybe they'll cooperate because when the shoe is on the other foot. Well, that's probably a dumb guess. But as long as you're entertaining it, maybe they won't do the same thing to you. Or maybe the public will see their subpoenas to Democrats and the use of inherent contempt as invalid. And, I don't know. Well, then what will they do about it? Well, I don't know what they'll do about it. Probably nothing. And we'll have elections and the pundits will tell us, that's so crazy, it just might work. And we'll see. Or, on the other hand, I guess as long as you're thinking in context of the January 6th panel, I don't have any plans, but maybe if the general public sees the exercise of the Republican subpoenas, and especially then the use of inherent contempt as particularly egregiously invalid, maybe people will storm the Capitol and get rid of these horrible traitors once and for all, or twice and for all, whatever that might mean. Just something less, a little less bad for once and for all, I think. Is that the direction you want to go in? But I don't know. I guess anything's on the table. People could storm the Capitol and threaten to kill the Republican members who are subpoenaing Democrats for revenge. They could. I doubt it. It's not in their nature, and I wouldn't advocate that it's a good idea. But I guess you got to contemplate that it could happen now. How could it not in the context of working on the January 6th committee? I don't know. Well, another segment come and gone. We've burned the hell out of that one, too. There are, of course, other things to share with you, but let's see, our top of the hour break coming up. Let me click on some of the things here that I have in pocket to remind myself of what the hell they are all about. I have a tweet thread from Cory Doctorow in my pocket here. And I think it's a large and long one and interesting, but I can't remember what it's about. But it's very long, so I guess we're probably not going to be able to cram it in before the break, but we can hold it for after. Let's see, other things, maybe more recognizable things. For some reason, I have it in my... Oh, I see. I have it in pocket twice because once as a tweet thread and once as an article that he parked somewhere else. You know what? Let's do this one. We got about a minute left. Will this one fit in? Bryn Tannehill, senior defense analyst at a think tank, that's how she identifies herself on Twitter, had this very interesting and very lengthy thread that I also won't get through, but I've now committed to it. No, you know what? I can't. It too is too long. All right, so Cory Doctorow and Bryn Tannehill coming up after the break. Gosh, what about, what do we have here from Lauren Myers? That seems, well, what I'm doing here is talking myself out of the time I have. All right, Laura Myers, tell us something else. We're going to go back to coronavirus just because it's here and it might fit before our break. Writing this, identify, does she have any sort of, I guess so. So by way of credentialing from the profile here, pro-kindness, compassion, and love. That's nice. Wealth inequality will destroy us. That's also useful information. Ex-Texan, global citizen, law, medicine, sustainability, languages, and long COVID are topics of particular interest to Laura Myers, who writes about COVID. In this case, I remember when the post-Omicron complications started, and everyone was surprised because it killed slowly and silently. There were a lot more neurological problems. People were dying months after their initial infections. That's going to happen again, she says, and I don't know exactly on what basis, but it sounds likely enough, but not something I paid a great deal of attention to. I certainly know about long COVID, but was that the case, that Omicron was giving people complications that was in fact killing them months after they thought they had gotten over it? Given the fact that things are creeping back up into the double digits here in Virginia, in my corner of it, and probably elsewhere, New York State posting numbers in the 5 digits daily, I guess it's something to keep an eye on again. Just wanted to warn everybody one more time. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Update from Ricky, who says, yes, the windshield shooting on her mom's car did take place in their high petty crime neighborhood in Charlottetown. We've correctly identified the urban hellhole in which this took place. Very nice place, of course. But yeah, everybody's got their petty crime issues, certainly. And saying we think it was a BB gun that was used, which doesn't even make gun fail. Every once in a while, I would find stories about what is legitimately a gun fail incident, somebody being shot by a BB gun. But you know how the gun nuts are. They would object every time. Now, that's not a firearms incident. It's hardly fair to hold firearms owners responsible for the accidents where there are air or gas propellant guns being used. And I guess to avoid the annoyance, I didn't deal with BB guns or pellet guns for that reason, or airsoft guns for that matter. But anyway, I guess you can still shoot out windshields with them, and I guess that's what people get a hold of for the fun of damaging their neighbor's property with projectile weapons up in Canada. Not that there's any real problem getting a hold of firearms in Canada. They just don't, because they're too polite. I'm going to smash your windshield, but I want to do it with less noise. They're very polite. That's all I can tell you. All right. So, so I was just throwing out the warning from Laura Myers, just worrying about that and whether or not we'll be keeping an eye. We're always got one eye on long COVID, I guess. But I was interested in the notion that I hadn't seen discussed very often. That's why I pocketed it, that Omicron had some particularly long fuse on its long COVID. Is that true? We'll ask Greg tomorrow, or at least we'll try to remember to ask Greg tomorrow. Or maybe Greg will hear the show and answer it for us. But as Laura goes on to say, remember, Omicron is not milder, And newer variants are even worse. And she includes a tweet from Eric Feigl-Ding, who you can frequently count on to chime in. Oh, did someone say COVID is worse than we thought? Hi, I'm Eric Feigl-Ding, and I'm here to tell you that that's true. You know, he's not making it up. What has he got here? Huge study by Harvard scientists finds Omicron variant is not intrinsically milder. It's just that we've all been vaccinated, which is great. Anyway, that in a study of 130,000 people, we found the risks of COVID-19 hospitalization and mortality were nearly identical. Just as my team, Eric's team, warned. And he's got a thread about it. It's embedded there. You can read it. I won't. Not on the air anyway. Laura continues. This is especially true for women. I guess she's quoting from somebody here. This is especially true for women who are experiencing loss of consciousness, migraines, and muscle aches, and the complaints are most common among younger women who experienced only mild illness. Then they thought they recovered, and then they have these crazy problems later on. Embedded here at the beginning of a thread from Yanir Bar-Yam. Yanir, a complex systems physicist, who remarks that report from out of Israel, mild illness, Omicron causing more neurological issues than previous variants. Many who recovered from Omicron experienced extreme weakness, loss of consciousness, even a comatose state, doctors say. So I guess that explains a large part of the Republican conference and their response to their destruction by Donald Trump. Okay, what else? Laura finishes up her tweet thread here with, contracting Omicron BA2 was also more likely to produce neurological complications than other coronavirus variants and influenza viruses, the HKU study found, resulting in more seizures. Meanwhile, the CDC director is visiting schools in a surgical mask, which is not the kind of mask that I think you want to be in. I think that was the point of that. You want to be in the KN95s if you've got them. All right. Well, anyway, I just thought I'd alarm people about COVID in the brief amount of time we had before the break. But now we're after the break, so we can go into something else. By the way, I guess I should also say time for us to pause to make comment. Oh, gosh, I have so much to do. On this, I guess, the 60 Minutes interview with, what's his name? The last non-acting defense secretary in the Donald Trump administration, whose name I already forget, Mark Esper. Yes, so they interviewed Mark Esper, again, because he's doing the book, so 60 Minutes does an interview, and he says all the shocking stuff that's in his books, maybe a couple of extra things. I don't know, I didn't watch it, doesn't matter, YOLO, LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. Well, anyway, I guess Donald Trump did watch it, because it was about him, and he fired off a letter on his stupid fake letterhead to 60 Minutes, and then had somebody take a picture of it and put it on Twitter. And so 60 Minutes and their Twitter account picked it up and circulated it. So now he's back on Twitter, right? Even without Elon Musk buying the thing. When asked for comment on this interview, the office of former President Donald Trump provided the following statement to 60 Minutes. I didn't see the interview. There's a link here to CBS News, so maybe, I don't know whether it's a link about the response or it's a link to the interview if you want to see it and you missed it. But Donald Trump, has all sorts of dumb things to say about all this. So he's responding and he's saying that the question, I don't know whether it was a quote or a paraphrase of the questions being asked here, but Donald Trump signs this letter that goes out that says, Nora, who I guess conducted the interview. I don't know which Nora, how many Noras they got. I don't know who it is. I don't watch 60 Minutes. Nora, as per your request, which is wrong, it's just per your request, on Jesper, that's what he called Mark Esper. Jesper, apparently that's funny. See you soon. So here's the thing he's responding to. There was a question. During a June 1st, 2020 meeting at the White House, the cabinet was debating what to do about protests and civil unrest. And he puts those in quotes, like as though what was happening outside of the White House in June of 2020 wasn't a protest or civil unrest. It was an all-out revolution against white American peoples. Well, anyway, during this protest and civil unrest, Mark Esper says President Trump wanted to shoot some of the protesters in the legs. A lot of foul language was used, and accused President Trump of calling members of the cabinet effing losers. I imagine this is a paraphrase of what went on 60 Minutes. And his response is, this is a complete lie, of course, right? And 10 witnesses can back it up. We don't know who any of them are, and they never have, but they can. Mark Esper was weak and totally ineffective. And because of it, I had to run the military. So, like, you know, you were the commander-in-chief. You're supposed to run the military. But he did it by himself. No help, which I guess explains either everything or nothing. I'm not sure which. I had to run the military. I took out ISIS. Qasem Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, right? Are those two different people? I think so. It's not Qasem Soleimani al-Baghdadi. That's not his name. There's a comma in here. But I don't know whether he punctuates correctly. And I've lost track of all the people that we've killed. Anyway, rebuilt the military with $2.5 trillion, created Space Force, and so much more. But then, you know, back into the voice here. Mark, do I care? Mark Esper was a stiff, was so desperate not to lose his job. He would do anything I wanted. That's why I called him Yesper. He was a lightweight and a figurehead, and I realized it very early on. He was recommended to me by some rhinos, and that's what he turned out to be. So, you know, he was a loser and a weak leader. But you nominated him. You made him defense secretary. I know, but I listened to idiots and rhinos and nominated the people they told me because he's so weak and ineffective as a leader. Not like me, who found out that guy was weak and ineffective, but nominated him anyway and then kept him as long as... Anyway, never mind. Responding to another thing. This is the part that I thought was most interesting. Most of this is just, you know, you did this horrible crime. No, I didn't. You did. So normal from this president. But this one was kind of interesting, just in terms of, this really took the lying to the next level, I thought. The paraphrase of the question, I guess, that was asked of Mark Esper on 60 Minutes is, President Trump wanted to send 10,000 active duty troops into Washington, D.C. after St. John's Church was set on fire. I'm sure that's exactly how the very eloquent question was phrased on 60 Minutes. Anyway, we all remember that story. And we remember that he wanted to bring in active duty troops into Washington, D.C. to control crowds of protesters, and it was sort of denied to him, but he went around it and brought in sort of paramilitary units of all sorts with no insignia on, and they turned out to be mostly like from the Bureau of Prisons, and it was just a real mishmash of federalized who knows what running around Washington, D.C., pretending to be the authorities in charge, and then he used them to clear Lafayette Square and march over to the church for the Bible holding photo op, right? Now, this is what takes things to the next level. Not only does he say, no, it's a total lie, I didn't want to do that, I didn't want to bring in the 10,000 troops, but he says instead, what I wanted to do, to really be the cherry on top, I did want to bring in 10,000 troops for January 6th. I was going to bring in troops to protect America and the Capitol, and to prevent this horrible violence that eventually took place that I had nothing to do with and didn't encourage at all, and totally helped with when they called me from Congress and said, you got to help us, they're coming here to kill us. And I totally didn't say, well, maybe they care more about the election than you do, Kevin, or whatever it was. And anyway, so his lie now is, not only did I not want to send 10,000 troops to control the Black Lives Matter protests, I wanted the 10,000 troops was about protecting the Capitol on January 6th, but you wouldn't let me do that, and neither would Nancy Pelosi. And does he point the finger at Mitch McConnell in this one too? No, he blames Pelosi and Mayor Bowser of D.C. So that's a really new and interesting twist. I wasn't going to send 10,000 soldiers to shoot the Black Lives Matter people. It was first January 6th. None of this would have happened if you would have let me do it the way I wanted to do it. But Nancy Pelosi stopped me. This is unbelievable. No state funeral for Trump, please. He can never be buried. He can be buried in this country. They should exile his corpse. And why wait? Honestly, just exile him now. Or Why wait to turn him into a corpse at this point? I don't know. I'm telling you, this is the true American exceptionalism. I've said it 100 times, that we're so slow to punish these people. In other countries, in not even a century ago, less than a century ago, that at the end of the reign of a person like this, they would be hung upside down with their throat slit on public display, machine gunned in the courtyard of their palace. Whatever. I mean, that's the true American exceptionalism. The January 6th insurrection wasn't settled on January 7th at sunrise in the horseshoe of, the Rayburn Horseshoe. Yeah. A hill term for the horseshoe-shaped driveway into the Rayburn House Office Building. Common meeting spot on the hill. But, yeah, I mean, another country would have just dragged the Trumps out, grounded those helicopters, and machine gunned the family after this trauma. But no, here, not only do we let them go, that's American exceptionalism, but we dither over what. Should we investigate that? I don't know. Maybe we should put some of the people who are guilty on the panel investigating. I mean, thank God Nancy Pelosi had the backbone to say no to that, but that was like seriously contemplated at some point by our press. So anyway, I mentioned that there are some other stories. There are several, and I really don't know how I'm going to get to them all. I'm going to have to save some of them for later. So why don't I start with the ones I teased you about earlier and said I would share with you and then didn't. We'll start with the Bryn Tannehill one, the senior defense analyst at the think tank, who has this important and interesting series of thoughts on, post-Roe leak. What's the name of the actual case? I can't even remember. I don't discuss it enough to remember the current case. But you do, so you remember it. So you remember it silently to yourself, unless you want to tweet the name. But Bryn has this interesting thought on recovering from that and what it would take to do that. Just a reminder, she says, because of non-proportional representation and demographics, in order to break the filibuster and overcome the R plus 6 or 7, 6 to 7, R plus 6-7 bias in the Senate, Democrats would need to win 3 straight elections by 19 points in order to win enough Senate seats to make abortion legal nationally. You see what they're saying? Well, let's codify Roe. Yeah, let's, but it'll be filibustered. And by the way, the fantastic allies we have on the Republican side, the few scant Republican women who are willing to stand up for the right to choose and will buck their party, have announced, no, I won't. What are you talking about? I didn't say I would buck my party. I said I support this thing, but I was lying. Or what I meant is I do support it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, reportedly Shelley Moore Capito, is that how she says the name? Anyway, she was like the least likely of the three, I suppose, but they were pretty sure, because they keep coming out and saying I will. Well, the answer is they won't. So, what's her name? Susan Collins? No. And apparently, by the way, Susan Collins has been on the phone with the police because somebody wrote in chalk outside of her house that she should codify Roe, which, as you know, is not a guaranteed First Amendment right to petition your government for redress of grievances. In chalk, show me in a constitution where it says chalk is legal, right? So she called the cops because that was she realized, oh, well, it's not my property, it's public property. Well, then they should be arrested for defacing public property. I mean, really reaching. Anyway, in the meantime, while we found out that she was a chump, which we already knew, Lisa Murkowski, who was also a chump, also comes out and says, oh, yeah, that Democratic bill that you're bringing to the floor to try to codify Roe, which is going to fail because of the filibuster, I'm going to help it fail because of the filibuster. I'm a no on cloture on that, so go screw yourselves. And that's the end of that. Some allies that they have there, and they're never going to help. Stop thinking they're going to help. Anyway, as Bryn is saying, as a reminder, because of non-proportional representation and demographics and the Senate having that built-in bias because every state gets 2 senators, even if there are 15 people in the state and they're all Republicans, the Democrats would have to win 3 straight elections by about 19 points nationally in order to win enough seats in the Senate to be able to overcome the filibuster, even to break the filibuster and get rid of it, and then vote to codify Roe. She continues on. And does everybody understand that that's like kind of unlikely? They need to win the national vote several times in a row by 5+ points to have a shot at breaking even. Breaking even, not actually succeeding. Breaking even and then losing anyway because it's even. Most forecasters look at the 2024 landscape and they don't think there's much of a chance for Democrats to hold the Senate past the 2024 election. Mitch McConnell has, of course, promised that if Republicans regain control of the Senate in 2022, that he will not let Biden put any more Supreme Court justices on the bench. He would keep seats open for, yes, up to 6 years if that's what it took. If Biden were to get reelected, yeah, I'll block all nominations in consideration of all Supreme Court nominations for all 6 years that are left if I am in the majority and I'm working as majority leader. And, all the Democrats that are on the court, should they, I don't know, be assassinated by Republican activists, they will not be replaced by Joe Biden. They'll be replaced by the next Republican president, whoever that may be, even if he's an insurrectionist and I hate his guts. So, isn't that great? Starting in January of 2023, there is probably no meaningful hope of changing the composition of the court. That is to say, after the 2022 elections and the winners of the 2022 elections are sworn in. Which, by the way, if you're, if you want to talk hardball, constitutional hardball, Kamala Harris will still be the vice president in January of 2023, the one responsible for swearing in the new senators if there is a Republican majority in the Senate. And don't do it. Maybe just don't do it. I don't know. I mean, that would be wrong and an insurrection and beyond the power of the vice president. But hey, what the heck, right? I don't know. Try it, I guess. It would be fun and interesting to work through anyway. But otherwise, if she doesn't, starting in January 23, there's probably no meaningful hope of changing the composition of the court. It is estimated that the U.S.'s already sky-high maternal mortality rate will rise by 21% as a result of, here's my answer, Dobbs versus Jackson. That's the case that they're deciding now that they're leaking about, in which it is purported that a Republican-appointed majority is poised to overturn Roe, because it's not settled law in this country. Or if it is, who cares? That was the answer that they gave at all their hearings, and they lied. Well, they didn't lie about that. It is settled law. It is precedent. It is something you should abide by. I'm not gonna, and it is precedent, but I can overturn precedent, and I will. Well, are you sure you want to say that? Oh, right. No, I'm gonna just, I'll leave it at that. It's settled law. Wink. Anyway, many states, or most states, Bryn says, are so gerrymandered that changing the composition of the state legislature, where the decision would go, post-Dobbs, I guess, if things go as expected. The state legislatures are so gerrymandered that change there is effectively impossible. The GOP, as I used to tell myself I wanted to say every time the GOP came up, the GOP has been able to maintain supermajorities in the Wisconsin legislature despite losing elections by up to 10 points. I think we all have been over this, but just want to reemphasize that in case it's the first time you ever heard it. Yes, that means the state legislature in Wisconsin is so heavily gerrymandered that 10% more votes were cast for Democrats in the elections for the state legislature in any given year. And Republicans not only held a majority, they held a supermajority. 55-45 Dems was the popular vote. And instead, I guess it comes out something like 66% Republican, 33% Democrats in the actual representation in the legislature there, in order to have, I guess, going by the idea of an effective supermajority, whatever it takes to overcome whatever blocking mechanisms there are there. I don't know what defines a supermajority in the Wisconsin legislature. She continues on, though. Because SCOTUS has approved political gerrymanders, then in most states that ban abortion, there is no realistic hope of reversing these bans by voting out the incumbents who put the bans in place. They're in gerrymandered districts. No court will strike down the gerrymanders, so you're stuck. Only 8% of U.S. House seats are competitive due to gerrymandering. A few states allow voter-initiated ballot initiatives or state constitutional amendments. However, the Supreme Court has allowed state legislatures to effectively overturn them. For example, down in Florida, when they voted to restore the voting rights of felons overwhelmingly, and the state legislature said, well, the hell with that, and chucked it out. And the Supreme Court says they're okay with that. Why? Because they want to. A Republican issue wins if we say that you can do that. Now, if a Republican issue was going to lose that way, well, then they'd rule the other way. That's all there is to it. The gerrymandered state legislature turned around in Florida and passed a law requiring felons to prove that they've paid all of their court fees before their rights can be restored. The problem, of course, is that records in Florida are so sloppy that it is effectively impossible to prove this thing. So, it's facially neutral. We're not saying we're against restoring felons' rights. We're just saying you got to pay all your fines. Okay, I have paid them. But we have no record of that because we threw out all the records. So, sorry, you can't vote. That's where we are. These things happen. This requirement was as fair, of course, as the 1950s literacy test was when it was used to limit who could vote. And thus, the ballot initiative was thwarted by politicians who cannot be voted out of office, aided and abetted by a Supreme Court put in place by presidents who lost the popular vote. There are very few good options for bringing back abortion rights after Dobbs v. Jackson. The U.S. political and legal system is so broken that it is completely immune to the will of the people. Doesn't matter if it's lost the consent of the governed. We don't care about the consent of the governed, and you can't manifest it anyway because we won't let you. A lot of legal-minded folks can see the writing on the wall, Brin continues. The loss of an implied right to privacy under the Fourth Amendment and institutionalizing the Glucksberg test, which I couldn't describe to you even if I wanted to. I just not familiar enough with the terminology. You have to look that one up. But institutionalizing the Glucksberg test is likely the end of guaranteed access to birth control, same-sex marriage, and the return of sodomy laws throughout the U.S. in at least 12 states. At the same time, LGBT people are being labeled pedophiles and groomers, our trans children are being taken away by the state, and our existences, I guess missing word here, maybe declared an obscenity. It's not hard to see a future where Texas has banned same-sex marriage again and is yanking kids from loving LGBT homes. We can already see that the GOP wants to ban abortion throughout the U.S. in 2025 by ending the filibuster, curiously enough, and passing a national law. GOP legislators are talking about women being prevented from leaving states to get abortions elsewhere. Other states are passing fetal personhood amendments that would potentially allow states like Texas to reach into blue states where abortion remains legal, like, for example, neighboring New Mexico, and then prosecute doctors in New Mexico who provide abortions to Texans, possibly under the felony murder rule. So that would be interesting. Texans leave Texas to go to New Mexico to get an abortion, and Texas starts demanding the right to prosecute New Mexicans in Texas. Extradition being demanded. This sets up the U.S. for the nightmare scenario of red states demanding extradition of women, doctors, and LGBT people who have fled to other states to escape the tyranny of religiously conservative red states that are no longer functioning democracies. Yes, this is basically lining up the court for a Dred Scott II decision. Ooh, that's a hell of a way to describe it. It also sets up the scenario where persecuted people don't stop at a blue state. The end of the line now has to be, sorry, Ricky, we're coming for you, Canada. So what happens when the Trumpist U.S., assuming a re-election, gives Canada the ultimatum? Extradite them or else. That's something to think about, Canada. You're not immune to all this. Anyone who studies this is well aware that the U.S. has basically stopped being a functioning democracy and that it's only going to get worse from here. The right-wing populist GOP is clearly telegraphing where it wants to go. Permanent minoritarian Christian nationalist rule.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Well, where we left off, of course, was that the right-wing populist GOP, as we'll start trying to call it again, is clearly telegraphing where it wants to go, says Bryn Tannehill. Permanent minoritarian Christian nationalist rule. By the way, you want to follow along with what Bryn has to say? Bryn Tannehill spells her name Brynn, and this is the way she does it on Twitter. So BrynNTannehil. Bryn Tannehill. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. You can follow along on Twitter, but you won't get there in time to find your way to the end of this thread. There's still more, though. People who don't study this within an analytical framework, this telegraphing of where the GOP wants to go, people who don't study it within an analytical framework but understand broadly that losing Roe v. Wade is bad, and it feels like we're heading toward the Republic of Gilead, are rightly alarmed. They may not be conscious of all these things, but they sense the trend. And did I say that right? Is it Gilead? That's what is that? Is that Handmaid's Tale? I didn't read the book. I didn't watch the show, but I get the reference. I think. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Am I wrong about that? Doesn't matter. You can gloss right past it. You can still understand the context of what's going on here. But anyway, so they may not be conscious of all these things, but they sense the trend, and they grasp in a general sense where this goes, though not necessarily the specifics. Although, I think that they probably grasp some of the specifics, too. Anyway, she goes on to say, we're heading towards either a corrupt authoritarian dystopian nightmare for women, LGBT people, and non-Christians, or a fracturing of the U.S. that ends the American experiment permanently. Or maybe both, I might add. Unless these more than one huge black swan events, those are basically the options on the table. Pick one. Something's missing in that, but you get the idea. But somehow, institutionalists want to deny the facts of the situation as I have detailed them. You might have detailed them wrong, but so far I agree. Anyway, they, the institutionalists, I guess, demand everyone behave as if voting and protests in designated zones is their best chance to change things, when anyone with a lick of analytic sense can clearly see that the GOP and the Supreme Court DGAF, don't give a F about what the majority of the population wants. They're oblivious to the fact that these systems have failed and that the public can no longer show their displeasure by voting incumbents out of office, putting in different judges, and passing ballot initiatives. The GOP and SCOTUS know protests have no effect. That doesn't stop them from crying about them. Get that chalk off my sidewalk, whatever. Which brings me to my point, which is Bryn's point. May also bring me to my point. We'll see. Bryn's point, though, is I look at the hand-wringing over the supposed optics of peaceful protesting outside of Kavanaugh's home, and I want to put my head through a desk. This is a mild escalation of things. If they're so worried about the decorum, they should be focused on the reasons why people have felt that protesting in front of the court is effectless. It's like complaining that complaining about the fire department using axes in your house when it's burning to the ground. Yeah, it's destructive, but way worse than what's happening in the bigger picture, I say. Okay, we lose the punch with this weird analogy. But anyway, the big picture for the U.S. is effing, I guess. There's some asterisks and then ing. We'll guess it's effing rather than say essing. But okay, effing terrifying. A great thread. A little bit weird at the end there, but good point. And just, bringing it back to Martin Luther King and the voice of the unheard here, or what are your options if you can't vote your way out of it? And interesting, I get the standard pushback from time to time on Twitter when you talk about things like this. Don't be despairing about this. Don't tell people that the votes don't matter. We're trying to organize to win these votes. We've got to win these elections massively. And if you tell people the votes are rigged or that they don't work, then they depress turnout. And okay, I get all of that. I'm not looking to depress turnout, and I don't want to. And I'm also not claiming that the votes are rigged. I think you can what the argument here is, you can absolutely vote in massive numbers to reject the Republican vision here and still not be able to do anything about it. Even, whether you win a majority or not, sometimes you can't do anything. You win a majority, then they say, well, as it turns out, you need a supermajority in order to make these changes. And even if you do that, then, okay, you pass that law. Next time, whatever. Well, we'll take that law and we'll run it up the flagpole all the way to the Supreme Court and just have the Gimitarian court overturn it. I mean, it is fatalistic. It is depressing sounding. It is, I don't know what, but just to say, well, okay, so LOL, YOLO, nothing matters, really, that will tend to depress turnout. It might, although, I don't know, depends what kind of turnout you're talking about. Like, if it depresses voting turnout, but increases let's tar and feather everybody turnout, I don't know what the result of that is. Probably the dissolution of the American experiment as we've known it, true, and that is a bad thing. But I don't know what other options there are at the moment. I mean, the plain fact of it is that when a majority comes out to vote, it doesn't appear to make much difference, certainly not on the state legislative level, increasingly on the national legislative level. And as judges unmoor themselves from having to depend on logic, reasoning, or precedent, or declaring what their reasoning is at all, well, I don't know what to tell you. You have presidents, people who will go down in history as actual presidents of the United States, despite all the evidence, who say things like, yes, the vice president, my vice president, can declare the opposite outcome of a national election and install me as president again. And they don't blink. They don't think that's funny or weird or uncomfortable or anything. They just say it, and they might even actually believe it. So let's vote a lot, vote harder. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to depress turnout. I guess I'll say this. To the extent that anybody thinks, well, I just won't vote now. That's the wrong answer. The only hope, I guess, of legitimizing whatever it is you think might possibly work, or even if you think nothing can work, I don't know. If you've made the decision, I am going to tar and feather people. I'm going to fight for independence. I'm going to go to the barricades, whatever your decision may be. A decision like that one, unwise, ill-advised. I don't know, whatever you want to say about it, but you're better off, like your cause has a better chance of working if you first demonstrate the absolute bankruptness of all the other alternatives. So even if it's your plan to go to the gun, you got to start at the ballot box and illustrate that you represent the majority, because, what we really don't want, and the obvious reaction to anything on behalf of the actual majority would be an even more heavily armed minority saying, well, as long as it's guns, we might actually be the majority. Let's go for it. So we don't really want to open that door. But if you're going to open it, I suppose you want to demonstrate first that there's perhaps just some shred of legitimacy to this whole thing, that you actually do represent the majority. I mean, you can't lose the election and then go to the barricades, unless you do. Like as a Republican, they lost the elections and went to the barricades and then smashed through the barricades and then set up barricades of their own so that the law enforcement couldn't get back in. And can you get away with that? To some extent. Some people are getting 6 months probation for it, so the answer ultimately is no. It takes a while. But anyway, it's not meant to tell you that voting is illegitimate. It's an absolutely necessary and very important part of a complete revolutionary breakfast, I guess. There's no other way to put it. Okay, what other thread did I want to share with you? There's so many things, but one of them is a thread, and it's from Cory Doctorow, and maybe the better thing is to read it in essay form. He promises right up at the top of his thing that you can read it that way, although he starts off with a text along with the very famous Norman Rockwell painting, the title of which I don't remember, and it's the famous one of the guy in the probably like New England-y town meeting standing up and speaking up for himself in the meeting, and everyone is astonished at his bravery and leadership. Very typical scene of Americana, and Cory says at this point, sometimes a tiny change in the political process comes along that makes you realize just how far things have come. A change that's both substantive and symbolic. What the hell is he talking about? Well, tweet number 2 says, if you'd like an essay formatted version of this thread to read or share, here's a link to it on pluralistic.net. Cory reminds us that is his surveillance-free, ad-free, tracker-free blog, which is a rare thing in this world. So what's he talking about? Well, I don't know. But, let's take a look over at pluralistic.com and read it in essay form. Okay. At the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Wow, I didn't think that's where this was going. A quiet, profound shift on antitrust. This could set up lots of discussion over many days and will likely be followed up, would logically be followed up by a tremendous issue of, what the hell are we talking about? Which magazine was it that did this? Mother Jones. A whole special issue on private equity capital and investing that probably would make a great follow-up on this, called the first article. Apparently they did like a 15-article issue all on this thing. Clara Jeffrey, editor-in-chief over there, noting on Twitter the other day, we're launching a special issue, 15 stories in total, of how private equity has completely warped the U.S. economy. This was an interesting fact. 1 in 14 American workers now work for companies controlled by a private equity firm. And we know about their sort of locust capitalist version of things and how things work, and the idea that 1 in every 14 American workers works for one of these companies that basically the model is, how can I eliminate these people's jobs so that I can take their salary and turn it into profits for myself to keep, is disconcerting. But that's not where we're going to start. We're going to start with Cory Doctorow and the Federal Trade Commission. What's he talking about here? Sometimes a tiny change, as he said before, in the political process comes along that makes you realize just how far things have come. A change that's both substantive and symbolic. Something like this terse 6-paragraph memo from the Federal Trade Commission, a deceptively anodyne wrapper for an explosive moment. And there is a link to the memo itself. Can I open it up? Is it really just 6 paragraphs? Do we want to read it? Probably not. We'll continue on with his essay instead. Here's the crux he offers us. The FTC and DOJ will host a series of listening forums. That sounds good. To hear from those who have experienced firsthand the effects of mergers and acquisitions beyond antitrust experts, including consumers. Well, I'm losing the structure of the sentence. Listening sessions, listening forums to hear from those who have experienced firsthand the effects of mergers and acquisitions. And I guess we're listening to a set of people that goes beyond antitrust experts and includes consumers, workers, entrepreneurs, startups, farmers, investors, and independent businesses. Now, if you aren't chest deep in weird antitrust lore, I'm not, this probably seems like it's par for the course. But believe me, this is a hell of a moment of restoration, a return to a vital, long-dormant principle in American governance, the idea that corporations should not be allowed to ruin the lives of the people around them. This actually probably should have been read in response to the Mother Jones stuff. It's just that they have 15 different stories on private equity capitalism, and this might represent a movement away from the damage they've done, but we'll do it in reverse. We'll describe the possible solution, I guess, and then maybe spend some time later in the week diving into what those problems are. But at any rate, this was the idea behind antitrust in the first place. The idea that corporations should not be allowed to ruin the lives of the people around them. As Senator John Sherman Antitrust Act, you remember that from history class, said to Congress as he labored to pass his landmark antitrust law in 1890, if we will not endure a king as a political power, we should not endure a king over the production, transportation, and sale of the necessaries of life. If we would not submit to an emperor, we should not submit to an autocrat of trade. Interesting analogy. This was the foundation of American antitrust. The idea that companies of a certain size, or scale rather, would, by dint of that size, be in a position to exercise the autocratic control of a monarch and return America to a tyrannical monarchy cloaked in the pretense of industry. For nearly a century, this was the bedrock of antitrust enforcement, the idea of harmful dominance, that companies could attain a scale that made them a danger to the very idea of democratic control and legitimacy. Rich people seethed and chafed and schemed to overturn this. They wanted to rule as if they were kings, wanted to avoid the scourge of what Peter Thiel calls wasteful competition. Competition is for losers, Thiel says. They bankrolled and promoted a deranged conspiracist. Ooh, that sounds like it needs the music. A deranged conspiracist. Wow. Who was this deranged conspiracist? Well, his name was Robert Bork. Yeah, we were talking about him earlier. Robert Bork, Nixon's Solicitor General, who advanced a truly bizarre theory of antitrust, among other things, right? But what were some of the reasons that he was rejected from the court? Well, this was one of them. Bork was, and this is a great description of what I witnessed, for instance, well, we'll get to it later on, but what I witnessed at the George Mason School of Law and the birth and use and expansion of the Law and Economics School. Very much wrapped up in what's going on here, right? Where were we? They bankrolled the deranged conspiracist Robert Bork, Nixon's Solicitor General, who advanced a truly bizarre theory of antitrust. Bork was a conspiracist whose book, The Antitrust Paradox, maintained the historically unsupportable nonsense that what Sherman, Clayton, and the other legislators behind America's antitrust laws really wanted was to block harmful monopolies and to leave efficient monopolies to grow and rule as benign kings. And here, citing, another of his writings in pluralistic.net, post-Bork era, and I guess a section called Man Down. He's speaking here of Henry Mann, or Manny, I don't know how he pronounced that name, M-A-N-N-E, who was, I think, the founding dean of the George Mason University School of Law and a big proponent of law and economics. And, I guess he gets to describing his biggest accomplishment or his biggest, most effective methodology later on in the piece. So for now, we continue on. Remember, what Bork brought to the table in antitrust law was that, antitrust was really about getting rid of harmful monopolies, but there are a certain class of monopolies that you could classify as efficient monopolies, and those have to be allowed to continue. What the hell is that? Well, it doesn't matter. As Doctorow explains, this is untrue. It's not just untrue, it's unhinged. No reading of either of the laws in question, Sherman or Clayton Antitrust Act, or the debates preceding their passage, supports this idea. It is a fantasy, alternate history, alternative facts, as they called them during the Trump administration. A lie. But it was a convenient lie, because if it were true, then all the rich people promoting Bork's fringe theory could create monopolies and rule as kings. There's nothing in the Sherman Antitrust Act or the Clayton Antitrust Act that differentiates between types of monopolies. They're all presumed to be harmful. But Bork comes up with this theory. It's not grounded in the law. It's not grounded in economics or anything of the sort. Well, I shouldn't say it's not grounded in economics. It hadn't been yet, but they created the grounding for it, just as they create everything judicially. For all the people who are sure that they're not legislating from the bench, this, too, is a crackpot theory that has no grounding in text and that no one believes, except they just use their network of law schools to teach people that it's real and to believe it and to go out and practice it. And that's an honest-to-God true program happening then and happening now and hinted at here. What are we talking about here? It's a lie, a convenient lie. It's invented, just as everything else is in my description of being pre-wrong about all things. No, none of these laws, neither of the Sherman or Clayton Antitrust Act have anything to do with it. There's no such thing as an efficient monopoly. But what if I posit to you that there is, and then somehow we fast forward into the future, never mind how, but in the future, 5 justices of the Supreme Court say, yes, there is. Well, then you're all pre-wrong, right? We're not there yet. You all think I'm crazy now, but just you wait. That's the basic idea of what's going on here. And then what happens? Ronald Reagan, who some people remember was actually elected president of the country twice, Ronald Reagan bought it. He basically said, yeah, that's a real theory. I'm into it. And now I'm wearing a suit and tie, a brown suit, but it's not a problem for me, apparently. And I don't know. I'm wearing a suit and tie. I'm speaking from the office of the president. So now it's a theory that everybody has to jump up and figure out. How do I knuckle under to it? There's no such thing as Space Force. Yes, there is. Oh, well, people are going to jump up and salute. Let's talk about Space Force. No, it's a child's fantasy. Shut up. Don't talk about it. Well, the child happens to be president of the United States and commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. So poof, there is one. Here, Ronald Reagan buys efficient monopolies. Now, after a failed bid to put Bork on the Supreme Court, that's one way to do it. How are you going to get 5 Supreme Court justices to believe your stupid theory? Well, step 1, make me a Supreme Court justice. I'll vote for it. Well, where are you going to get the other 4? I don't know. We'll see what comes next. But for starters, make me a judge for life. All right. Well, we tried. It didn't work, thank God. But after a failed bid to put Bork on the Supreme Court, he failed his confirmation hearing so spectacularly, by the way, that anyone who self-immolates in D.C. is said to be borked. Reagan then adopted his antitrust theories, nonetheless. They spread around the world thanks to other monsters of the era, Thatcher, Mulroney, you Canadians, Kohl, K-O-H-L, Kohl, not C-O-A-L, and Pinochet, another fantastic citizen of the world. The idea infected the judiciary. The cushy Mann/Manny seminars. That's where Henry Manny did his work, holding those law and economics seminars under the auspices of the George Mason University School of Law, by the way. The cushy Manny seminars, held every summer at a luxury resort, I've discussed them in the past, flew in 40% of the federal bench for indoctrination seminars on Bork's theories. Thank God it wasn't CRT, right? An actual legal theory being used to indoctrinate members of the federal judiciary at a cushy resort. It's just a getaway. It's free because the federal court system will pay for it because it's continuing legal education. Come to a beautiful resort. Who could reject that? It's free. We'll teach you how to think about antitrust law and teach you that there's such a thing as an efficient monopoly. What? Never heard of it. Well, we'll give you a seminar on it and show you how it works. Economically speaking, we will make an economic argument. We'll invent it, and then we'll give it to you. The economic argument for efficient monopolies. I recall the big thing when I was in school there was discussion in contracts of efficient breach, which I don't know for sure whether people who went to normal law schools that didn't really concentrate on law and economics ever picked up this theory, whether it's ever taught. But it was taught as a matter of course in our contracts course, that efficient breach, you're taught a contract is a contract. These are the terms of it. If you breach, and you're in trouble. This was a theory that says, well, what if it's more efficient to breach? Should you be held liable for the breach? Well, the answer is yes, because the argument is that even if I am held liable under the contract for breach and pay the damages, I can still make a high enough profit to have a net gain in the end. That's an efficient breach. That whatever it is that you're doing to breach the contract still results in a higher concentration of wealth for the investor or whatever. But their argument was that you shouldn't be held liable because it's efficient. Of course, the first argument in the first place from the economic point of view is that it's efficient money-wise despite the fact that there's a breach and you can be held liable for damages. I don't see why you should be released from the damages, but that was their argument. Similarly here, efficient monopoly. Yes, it's against the law, but something, and then poof, and then it all comes out okay. So why don't we allow it to do it? Why don't we get rid of the liability for efficient breach and efficient monopoly? How do you get there when judges are trained in the opposite? You train them your way. Fly them in for luxury weekends and teach them to think this other way. And that's what they did for years. These judges learned that the only people who should be consulted on antitrust matters are economists, specifically the kind of economist who trades in the kinds of highly abstract, inscrutable mathematical models that Bork and his University of Chicago colleagues specialized in. The second largest colony of law and economics, besides where it was founded at the University of Chicago, George Mason University School of Law, I'll point out, where Manny was working. Whenever a merger was in question, the companies could pay a Chicago economist to build a model that proved that the merger was, quote, efficient and thus good for, quote, consumer welfare. If that merger resulted in prices skyrocketing, the one thing that consumer welfare was supposed to concern itself with, those same economists could be paid to produce a new model to prove that the price increase wasn't the result of monopoly. It was due to oil prices or labor prices or the phase of the moon or anything but the monopoly situation. Take all the blame off monopoly. It's a familiar situation, I'm sure, to climate activists. Scientists can be paid to deny climate change. Similarly here, economists can be paid to say it's efficient, and it's such gobbledygook that nobody knows what to do with it. The other side objects to it, but the judges have just come back from a fabulous weekend in Hawaii saying you should overrule those objections because more gobbledygook. And if the defense attorney who's bringing the economist in as a expert witness says the right magic words that, I recognize them. I didn't understand those magic words when they were taught to me, but I now recognize them as the thing they told us at that seminar in Hawaii or the homestead or whatever luxury resort they had them in. Then I'm supposed to overrule the objection. Pre-Bork, everyone who was harmed by a monopoly had standing to seek redress from a regulator. If monopolies resulted in pollution or unsafe working conditions or corruption or the annihilation of a city's character or a town's way of life, the people affected could tell their stories to a regulator and expect that their experiences would be factors in the calculus as to whether to prosecute the monopoly. But after Bork, the only people whose input mattered was a Chicago-style economist whose mathematical models couldn't be interrogated by lay people. They became court sorcerers to the competition regulators, and when petitioners came before the regulator, they would slaughter a goat, read its steaming guts, and pronounce that consumer welfare was doing fine. If the petitioner had the temerity to say that they read something different in the offal, the sorcerer would smirk and dismiss them. Look who thinks he can read the economy in the guts of a goat. He didn't even get an economics degree from the University of Chicago. For 40 years, antitrust has been in a coma, sleeping while monopolies formed in every sector, destroying our planet, our regulatory integrity, our national prosperity, our public safety, and the confidence of people in their democracies. Oh crap, that seems like a lot.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, as you might imagine, there's more to it. It's Cory Doctorow, after all. It'll go on for some time. It's stuff we've discussed in the past, stuff I wanted to bring to your attention. Maybe we'll return to it the rest of the week. Maybe we'll look in on Mother Jones. But in the meantime, look in on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam coming up next. He'll take you on his own esoteric tour of the world.